Joining us is a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening to SWWTU President General Michael Annisette. Good evening, sir, and welcome back.
Well, excuse me. Good evening to you and your listening public. And
yes, indeed.
blessings always from the Most High and our ancestors as we
indeed.
navigate this turbulent waters that we are in.
I know, it's not easy. Rudinat Indar Singh, who is the Shadow Labour Minister, the UNC Shadow Labour Minister, of course, in his press release today, mentioned, due to the court ruling, he described it as high-handed, undemocratic, and an attempt to deflect from the real source of failure. He described the move by the Port Authority of Port of Spain to seek an injunction from the industrial court against the workers at the Port of Port of Spain wrong. And one would think that they would rather, instead of honoring the 12%, here it is, it seems as workers are being forced to pick back up their tools and get back to work. Give us an update, please, comrade.
Well, as I speak to you, one has to understand that the system that we living in, where there are protections on institutions that were designed not for the democratization of democracy, but to protect certain people within our society. And we at the SWWTU and dock workers, we are not fazed by what happened. We expected it to happen because we understood that this failure to implement the agreement was a direct decision taken by this present government. And they use all kinds of subterfuge in order to divert the attention away from the general public and the ordinary working class. What were the true issues? And the attempt to make it appear that dock workers were holding Trinidad and Tobago to ransom, and we always wait until Christmas to take our actions, and not conveying the true story in that this issue started long before this year, but in 2024 there was a wrap-up of the discontentment. We would have written to the Port Authority management expressing the need to finish and close the agreement, which doesn't only speak to 12%, and that is what the business community would want to make it appear, but which speaks about revolutionizing the port into a productive and competitive commercial entity. And that would have benefited Trinidad and Tobago because the efficiencies that would have derived from the agreement that we made with the Port Authority, who came to the union to support the transition and transformation and commercialization of the port. And let me repeat it, it's the port management came to the union. It wasn't a normal proposal for collective bargaining. It was a proposal for interest-based negotiations. And therefore, when the management cried out to the union about the issues facing the port and the requirement for us to put ourselves on sound economic footing, the union responded readily and in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. And here we are today when we are being made the boys where poison arrows have been flying at dock workers left, right, and center. But as I continue to say, comrades and the listening public, I hope my comrades from the trade union movement and the dock workers are listening. There is even life after death. Let me repeat it. There is even life after death. And if you understand the rhythms and the vibrations and the energy systems and the cosmos energy, you'll begin to understand that nothing happens before its time. And what is right will always remain right, and always remember. They said, let there be light. And there was light. And what it tells us, that there was darkness before light.
Yeah.
Every dark moment will produce light. And I will reassure the general public and dock workers that our light will prevail. We will respect the industrial court ruling because it's an institution, and we believe in respecting institution and not using the institution like we have seen for people's own whims and fancies, and to marginalize and undermine dock workers in their struggle for dignity and respect and decent
comrade,
wages.
Let me interject here, comrade. What's interesting here is that the Works and Transport Minister, Mr. Rohan Sinanan, he described the court's decision as a victory for Trinidad and Tobago, emphasizing the importance of resuming operations at the port. One has to ask then, at what cost? At the cost of destroying the morale of workers, at the cost of having workers work for wages that is not on par with the expenses and the cost of living that is taking place. I mean, as much as you have to abide by this ruling, one simply can't say that it's a victory if in fact that the workers themselves, the people who are doing the work, are not getting what is due to them.
Well, comrade, you are so correct, because the PNM do not see workers as important to them. And I'm not surprised at all by the minister's statement. And the question that I will want to ask him, when you say victory for Trinidad and Tobago, is it that the port workers are not living in Trinidad and Tobago? Is it that the port workers don't have families? And if you take the amount of port workers and you multiply it by 4 or 5, you're going to see the volumes of people who would be affected by working on a 2014 salary in 2024. But that is not the issue. The issue is that there was an agreement that the Port Authority management brought to the union. Let me repeat it for the general public to understand. It was not normal negotiations. It was an interest-based negotiations where the interest of the port, the survival of the port, the profitability of the port, the efficiency and the competitiveness of the port was the paramount ingredient that is rooted in that agreement that we signed. The wage proposal of 12% was only one component of a total agreement that would have seen the transformation of the port that this government and past governments have been talking about. But this government do not want that. They want to downgrade the port. They have not invested in the port in any meaningful way so that they could sell it to their friends, the business partners, and the international conglomerates which they deal with at the detriment of Trinidad and Tobago. But we will prevail because, as I say, the truth always prevails eventually. So, Mr. Sinanan, take a ride, beat your chest, right? Tell them people that they have to take the 2%. You know, we are your minions. And you all continue to talk down to workers. You all continue to demonstrate a dislike for the workers. But you come and hug us up when is the time to stain our fingers. But I will tell you, dock workers have a long, long memory. And as we say in the Seamen's Union, you bury a hatchet, but you mark your spot. I will say no more on that aspect.
And I think, comrade, that, you know, anyone who is looking on would have said, listen, this is something that could have been dealt with as far as dialogue. Dialogue was not forthcoming. Nobody wanted to, they didn't want to honor the 12%. Okay, so workers said, listen, I need to send you a strong message that we are not going to stand for this. We were promised something and we expect you to honor it. Now that the tools have been down, the stakeholders who are making their input is basically basing it on their own business. It seems as though the component, the engine room, the people who are making the utmost sacrifice, who was supposed to receive something and didn't get it, for some reason does not exist in this equation whatsoever. It is about the business, it is about Christmas, it is about the season, it is about containers, everything else but the workers themselves who need to get what is justly due to them. Why?
No, but you see, when you run that kind of narrative, you're playing right into the hands of the business community. Yes, the wages is important. It's an important component. And no one can deny that during that period, right, that wage increases were hovering around the 12%. But having said that, are you aware, and I will demonstrate how this government thinks, that in 2024, the senior management of the port have not received wage increases from since 2010. Yes, Trinidad and Tobago. And let me go a little further. The NIB collective agreement that was signed off and was registered in the industrial court, and the board and management send out circulars on behalf of the workers, saying when they was going to pay the back pay, the Minister of Finance issued instructions to the board interfering with the collective bargaining process like he is doing right now on the Minister of Works and Transport in the port negotiating process, and stop the payment. And the union now has to go to the industrial court to fight a case, have to pay money, but the government don't have to pay money because they use the taxpayers' money in order to fight their cases and give the cases to their friends, right, in high-end places, lawyers. Is that fair? The minister interfered with the due process, right? And then what was the issue? Because it was always the intention of this government to downgrade government employees and state enterprises employees, and where they have control over, to depress it. 2% over a 3-year period and another 2% over a 3-year, which is 4% over a 6-year period, which works out to be 4 cents. Yes, Trinidad and Tobago, that is the proposal. The government is telling their employees who falls under their remit that you are only worth 4 cents on your dollar for a 6-year period. And you ask yourself, is that colonialism in a new form, shape, excuse me, and fashion that is happening? And that is what is taking place in this country, and nobody wants to talk about that. The business community do not care about that, but I will warn them that the very same dock workers, or NIB, or postal workers, or and tech workers, or any worker in Trinidad and Tobago that you want to marginalize on the altar of your profits, you're going to live to regret it too. Because if you do not have an economy and a workforce that is properly paid decent wages and living wages, the economy eventually suffers. Go and look at some malls where places are closing down. And the Doma president, if dock workers don't have money to come and buy your cloth, it will stand up. So then, economic is about people. Economic is about a balance. It's like a scale. And it cannot be, and it must not be, that is only in the interest of the business community that we look at and we marginalize. you know, the dock workers and all other members of the working class. That is not good for our society, and I put them on warning today. Be careful of that road that you are walking. The government, you cannot, in all conscience, tell me that there are workers still, whether it's management or not, they are all workers who haven't received a wage increase from since 2010, and you don't care about that as a government. What kind of humanity, what kind of godliness, what kind of virtuousness is this in our country? And we want to talk about crime and other social ills.
And let me ask you this, comrade. Take us back to before this government came into the administration. Did they show any signs whatsoever that they were not going to be workers friendly? Was it a different narrative?
No, you remember when they were in opposition? Don't forget clause 34. They hold hands with the labor movement. Don't forget the accord with SWWTU and other partners, and I have a copy of it where Roger signed and the then opposition leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, signed. Don't forget they had the NTAC committee, but each time we go as a union to make proposals on behalf of the union, it was shut down. It was always do as I say or else, and we walked away from that committee because that committee would have raised all those standing negotiations, and we raised the 12% on behalf of dock workers. That is how far back that this issue has been engaging the attention of this government. And Trinidad and Tobago, dock workers, all the workers in Trinidad and Tobago, members of the working class, the poor, the voiceless, the disadvantaged community, ask the government how can they justify their behavior in the context of attempting to push down workers' throat a 4% over a 6-year period on the basis of take it or leave it, and then let the court decide. You understand? And we have to pay attention to those kinds of things. Dock workers, as I speak to you, they are living salary to salary because they are required to live on 2014 salaries, where all the taxes that has been raised, all the rental, the mortgage cost for houses, even government houses, which is subsidized, has gone up. You have to start at $500,000. All right, and that is a fact. Has going up, the price of cars. And if you want to bring it in for yourself, there is some onerous taxes that is placed on you. Everything is being done to stultify the growth of the ordinary citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I will continue to speak truth to power. You could go to court, you couldn't go to court, but the workers will always stand up for what we believe in and what we know is right. We will continue. You wouldn't muzzle us. If you believe, well, as I'm one of your newspapers, their friendly newspapers say, right, the union and dockers was hauled before the court. Like if we are some criminals for standing up for our rights, and rather than sit down and engage us in discussion, you use the arm of the state machinery to believe that you're tying our hands behind our backs. You may tie our hands, but we have our voices, which is energy, our voices, which is a force, our voice, which would have said, let there be light, and there was light, and they will understand what I am saying in due time and in due course.
Yeah, what's painful too, comrade, is that when you look at all that's being reported, and the fact that there are people out here who are working, who simply is saying, listen, I haven't been given a raise. I mean, cost of living has gone up. My salary simply cannot go the distance it used to go financially, and compounded with the fact that the total refined products imported from December 1st, 2018 to the 30th of June 2024 by Paria exceeds that of US $7 billion. Now, this money didn't go to the Children's Life Fund. This money didn't go to housing or employment or to assist the deport workers or any of the workers who are out there crying for the government to acknowledge the fact that they are working on salaries that are totally outdated. What was the situation yesterday? Give us an idea before we close off. When you had to look into the eyes of these port workers and say, listen, the court has made the decision and we just simply have to abide by it.
Well, let me tell you, I got strength, I got energy, I got vibrations from the port workers because they were strong, they were committed, they were resolute, and they show a level of resilience that I haven't seen on the port for a little while. And it tells me something because their consciousness, right, what we call God consciousness, has arisen in most of them, if not all. And then therefore, they didn't see this as a failure. They saw it as a victory, and they begin to understand how this government is against them. Because this is a government decision. This is Mr. Imbert, notwithstanding the management representation to him in 2018 and 19, showing him the benefit of implementing the agreement, how it will transform and transition the port into an international best practice port. He did not care about that. So when you hear them talking about productivity and the efficiencies of Trinidad and Tobago, and more importantly, the port, tell them blow away, because all that is just a charade, because your intention is to sell certain assets of Trinidad and Tobago, and the port is one of those assets, and you will do anything. And finally, ask this government, when last they invested in the port in the context of developing the port to make it competitive, and to make it productive. Ask them if we have dredging that will reflect the kinds of vessels that are being built in the world trade now. We haven't done anything to reflect that. Jamaica and other places would have done that, but no in Trinidad. No, we talk the talk, we talk less, but we walk right. And people's eyes are going to open. And let me tell dock workers, nothing happens before it's time. And I want to thank you all for being strong. I want to thank the women and who came out. All right. And then this way they could charge us for industrial relations offenses. That is their rights. And I wouldn't talk and say who is the lawyer that represents them and what law firm that they belong to, because there is a cycle and there's a Boy Scouts association that is operating in this society where only a few people benefit, and the income gap is getting wider, the wage gap is getting wider, and the household gap is getting wider, which is a frightening social phenomena that we must tame, and we must take a stand in the interest of our children.
Thank you, comrade. As always, very insightful. And again, we're in solidarity with you and the workers. Wish you all the best. I know they're going back out there, but I know the morale.
No, but they are strong, comrade.
Good.
Comrade, they are strong and more educated. And they feel stronger because, you see, you have to understand darkness to understand light. You have to know pain to understand joy. You have to know sorrow to understand joy. Because this is the world. Because this world that makes darkness also make light. And we are all part of this cosmos world. And therefore, we have to embrace the good times. And we have to embrace the bad times. All right?
Thank you, comrade.
And then this world going to end up in a way where you cannot fool the universe. Mr. Imbert and Mr. Sididon, right? You cannot fool the universe. And the chairman of the board is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that you allowed yourself to get tied up in a web, right? That doesn't speak well to the workers that on the port, and you are the chairman of the port. But as I said, the dock workers in Port of Spain and in Point Lisas, they are all my children. And in my house, we do not have bastard children of first class and second class. We have equity and equality, and that is what we are demanding for dock workers.
Thank you so much again, comrade, for taking time out. Best of luck to you and the entire team.
Yes, okay,
Stay
yes,
strong.
yes, no, this is not luck. This is a commitment to a cause that we believe in our inner God that will guide us and our ancestors.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good one.